Welcome to my houseplant tour in autumn 2022. So we're going to start here in my kitchen dining room. I'm going to go into my living room and then my bedroom, show you all the houseplants I have in my house. I must have about 200 plants. So we're going to have a little look. So this is my sink area in the kitchen. Got a few plants dotted around over here. So I've got a green syngonium. I recently root pruned that and it's going quite well, growing quite nicely. Got my favourite plant, my philodendron Birkin. Absolutely love this plant. You can see a half moon leaf there. Some people cut that out, but I quite like it, quite interesting. It's growing new leaves all the time. Looks like there's some more interesting variegation there. Quite an unstable plant. Need to give it lots of light so it doesn't turn back to its green form. This is a marble queen pothos. Really like this plant. I've got this as a tiny plant from an online store. Just look at the variegation in those leaves. Absolutely gorgeous. Really love that plant. And then at the back here, I've got a peperomia. I think this is a raindrop, I believe, or maybe an arbor. Can't quite remember. Let me know in the comments if you know. But there's a cute little plant there. I've got another type of peperomia. This is a cutting I took for one of my shorts videos. Just got it in an interesting little cup, blue cup. Over here now, I've got a couple of interesting plants. This is my Ficus elastica. Took a cutting from a mother plant a few months ago, stem cutting. So this is rooted successfully. Just beginning to see a root pop out at the bottom there. So it's rooting nicely, but I've yet to see a stem pop through. I'm sure it will though. Probably have to wait till spring now that autumn is here and winter's around the corner. This is my Monstera plant, a very young plant. Cutting I took from the mother plant in my bedroom that I'll show you later. There's no variegation in the leaves because it's a very young plant. There's two plants actually in this pot. So I'm confident that with age, this will develop the fenestration in the leaves and the perforations as it gets older. So quite happy with that. Quite a nice little spot for it. Gets lots of light. So that's what we want. And then up here we have a Hoya. Type of Hoya. Bought this online a couple of years ago. Quite a nice plant, nice variegation in the leaves, very subtle variegation. And it's not actually flowered, this one. I'm not sure if it's a flowering variety or if it's difficult to flower. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I would like that to flower. I've got one flowering at the moment, quite handsomely. I'll show you that in a second. And then in between my kitchen and my dining room, on this picture rail, I've got this peperomia, what's it called? A peperomia pepper shots. Nice little hanging plant. I got that from Dobby's, I believe. That's my favourite plant shop in the UK. Really interesting plants. So that one's grown quite nicely. I think it was only up to there when I bought it. So it's grown all that length this year. Bought it this year. Really nice plant. I really like it. So in this spot, this is an east facing room. So this is kind of the main area of where I put most of my plants. I've got a bench there in front of the windowsill, and then recently had this shelving unit installed on top of the windowsill. I'll show you that in a bit more detail in a second, but lots of plants here. So in the corner I've got a couple of Ficus elasticas. This is a kind of classic rubber tree, and this is Ficus elastica teneki. This is the plant. I've got a video on this on my channel where I chopped it in half basically. It was a much larger plant. Chopped it in half because it was leaning over and some of the leaves were looking quite scraggly. And it's since put out lots of fresh growth. So they do respond well to a good pruning plants, particularly Ficus elasticas. And then this teneki, I did the same thing. I made a cut here. I was hoping to get it to branch out into two new stems. It kind of did in a way. This new stem here, and then this kind of smaller stem that's much slower growing, lower down. So I probably will have to, because this is starting to lean quite heavily, as you can see. So I do rest it on this wall here to kind of give it some support. So I might need to cut that back and hopefully it'll branch out a little bit more. So next to my Ficus elastica plants, I've got this very nice plant, this Aglaonema. Really like this plant. This is from IKEA and I think it was dirt cheap. Must have been about £15, I believe, but had absolutely no problems with it. Really easy to look after. And then over here is my philodendron lemon and lime. I've got it growing up a moss pole, trying to get the leaves to grow nice and large. which they are starting to do. That's a nice large one. So as plants grow higher and higher, they tend to get bigger and bigger leaves. So just in front of my windowsill, on top of this wooden bench that we've got, I've got, starting from my left, I've got this, what's this called? This is a Pothos Enjoy, Scindapsus Pothos Enjoy. Again, I've got it growing up bamboo, hoping to get some bigger leaves. That one's a little bit bigger. That one's quite a nice looking plant. Got a fiddle leaf fig, got a care video on this on the channel. This is growing quite nicely. Got a Scindapsus pictus, I believe this is called, or a satin pothos. Really love the variegation in the leaves on that. Really interesting plant. Got that as a tiny plant. I think it only had 2 leaves. I bought this spring this year, 2022, and it's grown quite nicely in this spot. Likes the bright spot there. This is a classic peace lily, not flowering at the moment. This one tends to not send out too many flowers for some reason. I've got a recent video on how to get your peace lily to flower. And then we've got a Chinese money plant. This one flowered for the first time this year. I was really happy with that. Really nice, delicate white flowers. I've not seen it before in a money tree, and it was really interesting. And this one's just really full plant. I really love it. It just doesn't seem to get much taller, or it gets tall quite slowly. It really is a full plant. Got a crispy leaf there. Probably have to cut that out. Not sure why that is. Hope it's not pest damage. And then over here we've got a purple Pelida. I think this is a cutting I took from the mother plant. So easy to propagate these plants, type of Tridescantia. Really easy. And then we have a Hoya Lisa, and as you can see, if I can bring it over, it is flowering. Beautiful flower on that. Really love the flowers on a Hoya, fantastic. And they last quite a long time, quite prolific. So this is one half of the shelving unit that we've got our joiner to build. Really happy with this. This is fixed onto the windowsill, so it doesn't move, which is key. Because I've got 2 kids, 2 young kids that are curious, that would come along and probably knock this off, and there'll be all sorts of carnage, but just allows me to have some plants on the windowsill and then essentially have a second windowsill. Because before I just had the windowsill in this unit here, this bench at the bottom here. It was absolutely packed with plants, and they're all kind of overcrowding each other. So this way, a bit more spaced out, kind of looks like a shop in a way. So I'm really happy with it. So the plants on here, this is a cutting of my Ficus elastica Tineke. I think that's a couple of years old. And I did cut it there, and it has successfully sprouted 2 new stems to branch out into a tree-like fashion, which is what I like with my Ficus elastica plants. This is a black velvet alocasia, and I bought this. What's that? Oh, it's a leaf from my peperomia. It's interesting. So I bought this from Dobby's. This was reduced quite handsomely because they hadn't watered it in a long time, and it was on its last legs. But I gave it some water, rehabbed it a little bit, and it is doing fine. I think with these plants, it only has 3 leaves at a time. So it did die back when a new leaf sprouted. I think this was the newest leaf, and the oldest leaf died back. I think that's what happens with alocasias. So don't panic if you only have can only seem to get 3 leaves on your alocasia. Variegated Peperomia obtusifolia, really nice plant. This is an aloe vera. I've always struggled with this aloe vera. I think I keep overwatering this plant. It was bone dry, gave it some water, and now it's starting to feel mushy and it's going grey, like I've given it too much water. So I'm not sure what to do with that. And then down at the bottom here, I've got my favourite jade plant in the house. I've got a few jade plants. This one's my favourite. Let's see if I can get it out. It's a really interesting shape, I think. Really sculptural. The leaves look really beautiful on that plant. So that is a nice jade plant. And then next to it, in that tiny little pot there, this is my Echeveria. I did a video on cutting back an Echeveria when it gets leggy. And if you leave the old stem, it shoots new stem pieces. It's done so with 2 there, so that's good. So I'm leaving it there in a nice bright spot. Peperomia nivalis, really like that plant, really interesting, semi-succulent. Cutting of my Enjoy. So I've just got that in perlite. Little experiment to see if I can get my plants to grow just in perlite. It seems to be doing okay, but probably a lack of nutrients with these crispy edges. And this is a plant I got from IKEA. This is a moonshot or bluestone type succulent, really interesting thick leaves. And then 3 cacti. Got this as a present. As little kind of cuttings, I guess. They hadn't rooted, so I think they're rooted now in here, just waiting for them to flower. On this side of the shelving unit, got a Peperomia angulata. This was actually a cutting from the mother plant I've got in the living room, I believe. Growing very well. I think that's a 2-year-old plant. One of my favourite plants when it's in good health. Tradescantia tricolour. This one's not looking so hot, but I took cuttings from this in the living room that are looking much better. I'll show you that in a second. This is the mother plant of the purple Pelida. Purple Pelidas tend to get a bit straggly, so you do tend to have to cut them back. And then over here, this one I'm quite happy with because this is a Ficus benjamina variegated, and it was looking really, really sad a few months ago. But I repotted it, rehabbed it a little bit, cut it back, and it's since put out all this new growth. So it's like it likes this spot. I think it was in too dark a spot. Ficus plants generally need a bit of sun, I find. So this is my plant shelving unit, this little unit here that we just have plants on. And then I've got a couple of begonias. This one I can't seem to keep happy for some reason. The leaves always seem to go limp, even though it's watered sufficiently. But it is flowering. Nice white flower there. And this one's quite much easier to care for. It does get crispy leaves, but you just pull them out. There's one there. Just pull it out. It's just one of those things with begonias, I think. And it has got a flower there. So I'll just try and give you a little bit of a close-up on that begonia flower there. And that one there. I'm sure you agree, they look really nice. Flowering at the moment. This is my Hoya. I bought this from IKEA, just a classic green Hoya. The foliage doesn't look that interesting, but the good thing about this plant is that it's prolific at sending out lovely flowers. Look at all these flowers along here. Loads and loads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 flowers just on that bit. There's one down here that you can't quite see in shot, but there it is. Look at that. Beautiful. Really do love the flowers on a Hoya. And that's all just from that little plant there. And this plant sends out shoots and it goes absolutely everywhere, all over, all around this shelving unit. Absolutely prolific. Next to that, we've got this is a Monstera deliciosa baby plant. This is a little nobule I had that I just didn't have any leaves on it, and I just put it into my propagation box to see if it would sprout a stem, and it did. It was this one that has since turned yellow, needs cutting off I think. Got that just in perlite as an experiment to see if it will grow in just perlite, and I think the reason that's going yellow is because there's not enough nutrients. I've not fertilised this for ages, so I need to give it some nutrients because perlite is inert, there's no nutrients in it, so you do need to top it up with nutrients every once in a while, more so than you would if it was soil. And then this, one of my favourite plants, is my Tradescantia teddy bear vine. Absolutely prolific grower. I mean, look at the size of these stems. On this level of the shelving unit, I've got a really interesting plant, pickle plant, or Delasperma echinatum. Really easy to look after. I got that from Dobby's, one of my shopping trip videos. This is a lipstick plant. I've had this, I think, 2 or 3 years. And before this year, it never flowered. I had it in too dark a spot. I moved it here where it gets lots of morning sun and loads of red flowers sprouted this year. Absolutely prolific. It looks absolutely gorgeous. And then just at the bottom here is my open terrarium. I've got a video on the channel of me building this from scratch. And you can see it's growing quite nicely, quite happily. 3 plants in here, 2 begonias. That's a Fittonia, sorry. Fittonia, is that a begonia or Fittonia? Either one. And then a peperomia. And the peperomia is kind of taken over a little bit. So I probably do need to cut that back so that these two other plants can have their share of the limelight, but that's looking quite nice in that spot. And just next to that shelving unit, I've got a couple of plants that are not my proudest plants, I must admit. Two types of begonia. They never look too happy. This one's really suffered. I think maybe overwatering. All the kind of stems are kind of died back, so I'm slowly rehabbing that, or attempting to anyway. And this one is one of my thirstiest plants. As soon as it goes a little bit dry, it goes really, really limp. Happened to me yesterday, in fact. I hadn't watered it for about a week, and it basically like it was dying. So I gave it some water, and it always bounced back, but for some reason, just always seems to need a lot of water. Then up here, above my desk area, is a devil's ivy, Puffos devil's ivy, and as you can see, trying to get it to train it to go along that picture rail and along this side of the picture rail as well. I think that'll look really nice when it eventually gets there. So on my fireplace hearth in my dining room, got this ZZ plant. Got a video on how to look after this. Really easy plant to look after. A couple of Dieffenbachias. These plants were really suffering. I did have it on my shelf, my bench just in front of my window here. Too much light, I think, and it kept getting yellow and brown leaves, but since I've put it in a darker area in front of my fireplace, the leaves do seem a bit happier, both of these. Peace lily, again, not flowering at the moment, but I'm sure in spring they will come. And then I have got in the corner there is a Dracaena. On my fireplace mantle, got a type of Syngonium, pink Syngonium. Really nice plant, really nice colour on the leaves. Potentially not getting enough light because the petioles are quite long. Whenever that happens with a plant, it means it's probably not getting enough light for it, but I like it in that spot anyway. Monstera adansonii. This one is looking okay. I've had a bit of trouble with some browning leaves. I think this is par for the course with this plant though. There's another one there. Again, got it growing up bamboo to get some bigger leaves. That's the idea anyway. And then this is another type of Syngonium. What's this one called? I think it's a red arrow. This was actually a cutting from the mother plant, and the mother plant died. I had it hanging in a macrame hanger in front of my window there, too much light for it. This is the cutting that I took from it. I learned my lesson. I put it in this spot. It doesn't get any hours of direct sun. And then we have a Calafea. Little baby Calafea. This is doing okay. Started using the water from my dehumidifier to water this. Got a video on why you shouldn't use tap water to water your plants. You can have a look at that after this. This is an interesting one. This is a green-orange plant, or a Chlorophytum orchidastrum. And this was really, really suffering. Kept pushing out brown leaves. In fact, can I pull one out there? Kept putting out leaves like that. I had it in front of my window on that bench. I think it was getting too much light. I've since moved it to this spot, watering it with my dehumidifier water, and it is looking much, much happier. Really happy with that actually. This is in the same family as the spider plant, and I just really love the orange stems and the green leaves, the contrast. I'm really happy that it's much happier in this spot. And then we've got a nice variegated snake plant. Classic plant, very sculptural, really nice. I've got a few plants in my living room as well. So I've got some plants over there on that cabinet, and I've got some plants on another shelving unit on my windowsill. So let's have a closer look. So in this corner of my living room, this is an IKEA cabinet. This is quite a dark area of the room, and I wanted some plants on this IKEA cabinet. And I've got this Calafea here as well. So I've set up some grow lights. So I've got some kind of standard gooseneck grow lights that you can buy on Amazon for these plants. And then in this lamp here, I've got a rather bright grow bulb from Sansi. I have shining over this Calafea, and it absolutely loves that. Lots of light for it, and it's got absolutely massive since I got this bulb to grow over it. So Sansi, you can go on their website and get 15% discount if you use Sheffield 15 at checkout for their grow bulbs and grow lights. and I recommend you do. It's a fantastic bulb. Top of this IKEA cabinet, I've got this peperomia plant. It's a plant that I've been struggling with. Don't think it likes being in this terracotta pot, unglazed terracotta pot, maybe too dry for it. But I've been topping up with water more regularly and it does seem a little bit happier. I've got a video on plants that I'm slowly killing and that was one of them. But thankfully, since I've upped the watering, it seems to be recovering quite nicely. This is the cutting of my Tridescantia tricolour. Looks a bit more healthy than the other one in the other room. And I just love the leaves on this, really interesting colours. You know it's happy when there's not so many green leaves, lots of purples and pinks. That's when you know your plant is very happy, getting lots of light, which it is in this spot with these grow lights. Try and put that on there without damaging the stems. This is just your normal Tridescantia zebrina. To be honest, I don't really like this plant. Just looks nice when you first get it, but then after a while it just turns into a big mess like this seems to have. So not sure what I'm gonna do with that. At the back here, I'll just show you one of these. This is lemon tree seedlings. I've got a video on turning lemon seeds into trees. So I've got 3 of those on the go at the back there. They're growing nicely, really easy to do. Check out that video. Got some more propagations of Ficus elastica. These are rooted and they're actually stuck onto the glass. So I do need to deal with these. I've been neglecting that a little bit since I made the cuttings, but I think they'll be happy in there for the time being. Cutting of my spider plant. Mother plant is over that way. So I've got a few cuttings from that. Just take the babies off the plant and plant them up and you have 3 plants. And then I've got another Chinese money plant and another Nanook in the corner there. Okay, on my fireplace mantle in my living room, I've got 2 of my favourite plants really. This is an Aglaonema tigres. Let's look at the leaves on that, absolutely beautiful. Giving me no fuss whatsoever, happy in this spot. Probably gets medium light, probably 2 or 3 meters away from the window. And this is my Philodendron Brazil. Absolutely love this plant, love the variegation in the leaves. And then in the corner over there, I've got another snake plant. And sandwiched in between my TV unit and this sofa here, or this snug sofa, a couple of plants. I think this is it an alocasia? I think it's an alocasia elephant ear. I got this from IKEA. And this I had trouble with because it was struggling to put out new leaves. And this year it's done much, much better. It's put out a couple of new leaves. I think that's a new one there. And there's a new one in the middle there. So they used to come out, they used to turn yellow and die off straight away. I wasn't sure why. I think it might have been a nutrient deficiency or not enough water. So I did up that and it's much happier. And over here we've got another money tree plant. Just above those 2 plants, we've got my spider plant. This is the mother plant that always sends out little babies. Doesn't look the healthiest, gets some crispy leaves, but it always sends out babies. There's one there starting. So it's quite a prolific grower. Just like in the dining room, I've got another shelving unit built, exactly the same, tied down to this windowsill. Got some nice selection of plants on here. This is obviously a Monstera deliciosa. There's another cutting I took from the mother plant in my bedroom that I'll show you in a bit. And as you can see, beautiful beautiful fenestration in the leaves. And you know when your Monstera deliciosa is happy when it has perforations, these holes in the leaves. So that is a good sign that this plant is very, very happy. Got a cutting of my Pothos Devil's Ivy. In many ways that looks healthier than the mother plant. Seems to like that position. That'll grow bigger and bigger. That's only a few months old. Peperomia polybotra, really, really love this plant. Love the thick glossy leaves. Really, really nice. Similar in many ways to a Chinese money plant, but I think it's a bit nicer myself. I've got another cutting on my Ficus elastica Tineki. This is a type of peperomia. Can't remember the name of it. I'll never remember the name of this plant. It's a bit dry. It's a bit droopy. I think I need to give that a water. Another spider plant. This is the mother plant of my Peperomia Santorini that I used for my terrarium, open terrarium. The mother plant of the Peperomia obtusifolia variegated that I showed you in the dining room. And then that's the mother plant of the Peperomia angulata that I showed you in the dining room. This here is a Philodendron New Reds, one of my newer plants. I got this from Lidl in the UK here, discount kind of supermarket place. And I bought this, it had spider mites. I didn't know I had spider mites. I didn't do my checks like I always preach you should do on this channel. So I gave it a good spray, sprayed all the leaves, trying to get rid of them. And I don't think they've come back, but as you can see, I've kind of separated it from the rest of my plants. I kind of quarantined it. I don't want it to spread to my other house plants and ruin my collection. So we're up in the bedroom now. This is the mother plant of the Monstera deliciosa. Quite a large plant. This isn't the large form Monstera deliciosa, it's the kind of the smaller variety, but still quite a large plant. I've had this absolutely ages, must be about 6, 7, 8 years maybe. I got it from IKEA. It's only a little plant. I recently up-potted it into this very large one. I made a shorts video on that. Yeah, really nice plant. Always seems to face that way where the window is. So I do have to turn it just ever so slightly once in a while. But that's really happy there. And then we have its younger brother, I guess you could say, Monstera adansonii. This is a cutting from the mother plant that is sitting on my windowsill in the dining room. That's quite happy. Got it on bamboo stick. Probably need to extend that so it can grow taller and higher. Then on the windowsill in my bedroom, got a nice selection of succulents. This is kind of the brightest spot in my house. This is a west-facing room. My living room is also a west-facing room, but there's a hedge that grows outside it, and there's nothing blocking this, so this gets lots of afternoon sun. So this is where I keep my sun-loving succulents. So over here, I think we just got this from IKEA, just a little succulent mix. I think there's a couple of echeverias and a sedum growing quite tall there. This, as you can see, did flower this year, which is always nice. And then we've got a jade plant. This is a cutting from the plant I took downstairs. It's got a very thick trunk, so that's good to see. Quite a healthy plant. This is another type of jade here. Can't remember the exact name. Kind of a wavy jade, wavy leaves. Then we have another sedum. Now sedums, I didn't realise that they're crawling plants. So they kind of creep along in this fashion, and then they develop new plants along the stem. So I always thought that when they kind of got tall and lanky and bent over that you're supposed to cut them off, but they are a creeping type of succulent. So leave them be, that's what I'm doing. This is a jade plant, a really sad looking jade plant. I like to show you my successes and my failures as a plant person. But this plant, for some reason, lost all its existing leaves, or most of them anyway. They all turned yellow and dropped off. But thankfully, new leaves are coming through, so hopefully that'll be okay, that jade plant. Just give it some time. Next to that, type of echeveria. This is one I got from IKEA. I've got a video on cutting back this echeveria, this very echeveria. I think I've done it twice since I made that video. So when it gets leggy, just chop it off and replant it. I've got a video on that you can check out. And then I've got more of those cacti that I had downstairs. And next to the cacti, I've got one of my favourite succulents, another type of echeveria. Really, really like the leaves on this plant. I like the farina coating that kind of grows on the leaves, really interesting. And I've got another cactus. I got this from B&Q, I believe, on my B&Q shopping trip video that is on the channel.